from the United States. So Customs and Border Protection works very closely with Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security, which is tasked with enforcing export of sensitive technology. Through that partnership, we do make interdictions at export when we get the correct information from the Bureau of Industry.
Okay, I'm asking, are you focusing on China? That's my question. And if so, are you prioritizing China? That's my question.
Okay, I apologize, sir. Yeah, so we're responsible at import for managing all threats. In the context of IPR, well over 90% of counterfeit goods come from China and Hong Kong. They're consistently named on the USTR Special 301 report as a source for counterfeits. We are absolutely concerned about that threat, and it's something we think about every day.
Mr. Paul, same question.
Again, as my colleague said, to not be familiar with the interchange that you mentioned, I can't tell you on that same line to even go a couple steps further. On the export of sensitive technology, that is part of what we do under HSI Global Trade. We have our counter-proliferations investigations. And yes, we are focusing on China, on Russia, on Iran, on what's happening in those theaters. With the export of sensitive technologies, we have a wonderful working group, B2C2. It's our Export Enforcement Coordination Center, and we work hand in hand with DOJ and with Department of Commerce using their strike force for prosecutions on this.
Let me shift to Mr. Goldsworth. Mr. Goldsworth, you mentioned some activity in this space. How much more do you think we should be doing than what you mentioned? The suggestion by Mr. Ray was that we're not doing enough. Do you agree? And if so, what would you do in addition to what he has suggested?
Thank you for that question. It's a very interesting one. So thank you also for repeating and amplifying Director Ray's comments about this. I think also not only he, but the Office of ODNI in the annual threat report said specifically that Beijing is seeking to increase its science and technology sector in part through the theft of intellectual property. This is absolutely a concern within the Department of Justice. We're prioritizing that. I think to your question of how much more should be doing, what more should be doing, I hesitate to describe the limit of how much we ought to be doing. I think in this field, as you see the amount of intelligence go by, you see information about the extent of the theft, it's just deeply concerning. As I've said before, if we have more resources, we would do more of these cases. We're interested in doing more of this. And I also, having Michael in this, I want to emphasize that within the Department of Justice, this work is primarily coordinated through my colleagues in the National Security Division, who treat intellectual property theft for the benefit of foreign nation states alongside the other ways that foreign nation states are breaking our laws in order to advance themselves.
Thank you. Yield back.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Ross, for her questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of the witnesses for being with us today. I'm really grateful that this subcommittee has shown such a bipartisan interest in protecting American innovation. This hearing is yet another example of that focus and the work between the chairman and the ranking member. Criminal IP theft costs American innovators hundreds of billions of dollars every year. 47% of brands have lost sales to counterfeit goods, a third of which have been reported, and at a drop in revenue of 10% or more. As you know, this is a serious loss to American innovation and one that administration after administration has tried to combat. Mr. Goldfoot, my first question is for you. In 2020, Congress passed the Protecting Lawful Streaming Act to close a loophole in the law that allowed sophisticated criminal enterprises operating streaming websites to traffic illegally copyrighted material. It's important given that the American motion picture and television industries contribute 2.4 million jobs across the United States. And in 2022 alone, there were over 215 billion visits to pirate sites, many which look much more sophisticated than they did even a few years ago. Piracy piracy of filmed entertainment costs the U.S. economy $29.2 billion annually. Now that Congress has closed that loophole in the law, I'm interested in how this authority has been used. Has DOJ pursued any actions using this new tool?
Thank you for the question. So, in fact, last week, the District of South Carolina, in a press release, announced what we believe to be the first concluded case for the Protecting Lawful Streaming Act. The defendant's name is Franklin Valverde, and that series came out on May 2nd. However, having given you that example, I don't want to give the impression that the Protecting Lawful Streaming Act has been used as much as you or I might hope. Let me first thank all the members of the subcommittee for the work that many of you did in getting the PLSA passed. That's an important new authority. We were able to take down some streaming services before the passage of the PLSA, charging defendants based on conduct they did before that statute was enacted, using the 1976 Copyright Act and other authorities. One example I can give is Gears TV. This was a service that was essentially stealing streams from channels, reselling that. We were able to charge and convict that individual under the Copyright Act of '76. Another example I would give, this was also a use initially of the PLSA, was a defendant named Joshua Street, who's charged in the Southern District of New York. His business, he was stealing the streams from sporting events. So Major League Baseball, NFL, he would get all of them. Now, he would get them through various means. But for Major League Baseball specifically, he was charged with hacking into their facilities in order to get that. Now, that's a helpful example because it shows that when we address these, it isn't necessarily one or two statutes that are always going to get used. In that case, we had a guy who was violating the Computer Volume Abuse Act. And so he was charged with that and also with the Protecting Lawful Streaming Act. In the end, that was a plea. He pled to the Computer Volume Abuse Act and not to the PLSA. That was still there in the case. So the PLSA is a welcome development for us. I agree with you also. Streaming services are an enormous concern of ours. We have taken down, as I mentioned, there's Gears TV. We took down Jetflix, a related site named Stream It All. I want to take down more. I hate seeing these things up. I'm very interested in everything we can do to address it. With more resources, we can address more of these, but I'm quite proud of the work that we've been doing on it so far. And the PLSA is going to help us do more in the future.
Thank you very much. With the very limited time that we have, Mr. Ball, one of my colleagues touched